So what the night? OG boy. Know that they ride or die. I'm a OG boy. Know that they ride or die. I keep
What's up, Lucky Gamers? It's Lucky Lux, and today we're going to be talking about fighter espers, explaining their role in Dislyte, what they do, why you want them, why you need them, and then also I'm going to show you guys my 3 favorite espers. Dislyte wanted me to show you guys who I typically use. Anyways, so espers that are in the fighter class, right? So that's going to be like Li Ling, everybody almost pretty much has them. Your fighters are going to be your DPS. They're really not going to do anything typically supported. They are just going to deal all of the damage that you need typically for any activity that you do. If you're doing PvP, you're going to have like 1 or 2 fighters on your team. If you're doing anything for boss farming, you're going to have a couple fighters. Like any activity, you will always have a fighter. Typically, they have a burst. It can either be AoE or single target, which AoE is just basically they affect multiple enemies' area of effect. Single target is where they just hit one enemy and they just blow them up. What is it? Lewis, right? Ares. He's single target, but he does a lot of damage. Same thing as like Freddy. And then you have your AoEs like Narmer, Ra. Lin Zhao has both. You have who else does AoE damage? Like if you look at it, oh, there we go. Mona. Mona is also AoE. She has 2 AoE attacks with 1 single target, but since she has 2 AoE attacks, she's going to be considered an AoE fighter, right? So, typically with your DPS fighters, you do want to level up their skills. They are going to help you progress through content a lot better, right? Like, because if you have your DPS leveled up, then they can kill a boss faster. They can take somebody out in PvE better, right? And so this is where your greater offense, because also your greater defense at times. And this is the more common team formations that you want to have. Yes, you can have a bunch of stallers and you can finish content as well. But if you want to finish it in the most efficient way, that's where you want to level up your DPS's skills. Because for some of them, yes, it is just a straight DPS increase, right? Like it's literally just letting them hit harder. But those few percents, when you start to give them better gear, it adds up very quickly, right? So that's where you really want to take advantage of that. Also, you want to make sure that you can advance them as high as you can. If they have any residents, right? If they're a 3 or a 4-star, or even a 5-star if you're welling out, get their residents, put that into attack, because that is typically what they scale on. They're not like a defender or a support, anything like that that scales off of HP or defense. Put it all into attack. And then on Ascension, make sure you level that up, because typically it's going to be some really great skills. Really great stats for them, right? So the first few, of course, are going to be the flat stats, and then they start to move on to either getting a flat speed, or they get something like HP, or even Lin Zhao gets 20% extra attack. Some of them get like crit. You have some that get accuracy. They can help them if they have like a small debuff or something like that. But you do just want to make sure that you max them out. I went and maxed out my DPS characters because my supports and defenders, like at 50, most of them were alright, right? It's just when I wanted them to, if I want them to do more, have better defense, have better health, then I can take them to 60. But it's not as important to me as your fighters, because those are the ones who are going to be pushing, killing bosses, and pushing you through content the most, right? So one of my favorites is, of course, Li Ling. One, his design is sick. When I haven't seen too many designs of Lin Zhao out there, and I thought that this was like honestly one of the coolest designs. He does a lot of damage with his S3. Having the true damage in his kit also is really nice for countering other tanks, countering defense uses, because like when you boost his attack, this 6% of target's max HP is pretty huge. He also steals some AP on his S3 and his S2. Honestly, his S3 does a lot of damage in the point war. And then when you follow up with the S2 after all the AP you steal, you can take out a unit. And then you can have them either on counter set or whatever you have them on. with his S1, and it does a decent amount of damage too. He's honestly in 90% of content I do in this game, if not 95. And a lot of people have him because he is just a really good, solid unit. And he works in a lot, even when he has a disadvantage in the element with his healing that you get on him with his third ascension, right? He can heal himself. He pretty much full heals, especially when you have the lifesteal set on him, which I do recommend. A lot of people have the attack crit rate. I do recommend putting him on Hades set with the counter set in your content. Now, if you're doing strictly PvE with him, then you can get away with the crit rate. But I do like the counter set because he has a lot of advantages to a lot of the units people use. Because if you just start to look at the counters, like if you're going against an element that you benefit against, then you get to counter more. And so I just find that better, especially in PvE content. Now, of course, that means you have to, farm APEP a bunch, but it's fine. So he is one of my favorite units. Now, my second favorite, I know I'm just talking about 2 5-stars, right? But Hyde is amazing. I have always talked about Hyde. Hyde has soloed content for me. He has soloed APEP for me. He's soloed levels in the tower for me. It's just with his passive of being immune to buffs and debuffs, especially when they just run that rampant in the tower. He reduces damage taken from sources. He buffs his attack. He can ramp up when your team is dying and you think that you're gonna lose the level or whatever that you're doing. He can just come out, heal up fully with the S3, especially when you have him on his own set, the Hades set. And then when he counters, his S1 can lower the HP ceiling. It does decent damage. And he's just in a full cycle where you're just countering, hitting your S1, healing up. You get your S3, you full heal. And you just rinse and repeat that. And honestly, he can push through content. Now, you will see... Oop, went to the wrong place. So you will see that the highest use set on him is Hades counter set. These other builds are literally just I would say you would build this if you just don't have a good counter set, but I would still even just put a counter set on him versus putting this. Now, and then the stats that you want to look for, I will say you do want to look for a little bit more health on him, typically because he revives based off of his max HP. You want him to have decent HP because a tankier Hyde is a lot harder to deal with, especially with his reduced damage. But then you want him to have enough attack to be able to lower the HP ceiling and do some damage, right? So he is what you would call somewhat difficult to gear because you also need accuracy to steal the buffs away. But you don't really have to have the accuracy to steal the buffs. He's gonna get his stacks just from people dying, just for people doing AoE debuffs. And then when he gets the occasional buff that he steals, it's all right. But I would say you do want to focus on him having a little HP, maybe even a little defense if you can get it for him, but mostly attack on him. Crit rate, crit damage just helps him to put out damage because he does AoE on his S3. He does decent damage on his S1. Now, as for speed, that just kind of depends on what you're fighting. If you're fighting against something that you can counter against all the time, then you don't need him to be fast. If you build him tankier, defensive, you're fighting against an element that he can fight, then he's fine. If you're going probably in PvP, you can still get affected by AP manipulation, and so that's the problem. You have to decide that based off what you're fighting. His gear, I would say, you could switch out. His speed piece with attack bonus or HP bonus, defense bonus, just depending on the content that you're doing. If you're going in PvE, you probably don't need all this speed. You can go with some attack bonus or some HP. If we're going in PvP, that's where it's how fast are people, right? Everyone's kind of getting up to that 250 speed, so you need to think about that. If I have somebody sitting at 100 speed, they're going to lap me. So you need to really think about that. Even with all his healing, he can die. He absolutely can die. You just have to fight him in the right way. But after that, my favorite one after that is actually going to be Tang Yoon. Tang Yoon is so solid. He is a 3-star that does a lot, well, has the opportunity when he wants to do a lot of damage. I overlooked him when I first took my glance at him because I wasn't really buying into the extra chance of triggering the polearm. I thought it was just like, you know, I thought the extra damage was just kind of just like, nah, like it wasn't that great. But oh my, this S3, if a critical hit is triggered, then Tang Yoon can use Iron Polearm to trigger a pursuit on the target. So you build him on crit, you build him with some crit damage, and oh my, is he doing some decent single target damage. I mean, he is hurting, and a lot of free-to-play users are using him because he hurts. When I have his gear on him, he's sitting with like 80%, like 80 or 90% crit rate with like 300% crit damage because he just does so much. I've been leveling up his abilities, trying to get him up because like he just does a lot, and these extra values matter because that's going extra into the crits. And he has decent multipliers on it, but whenever he triggers attacks, I've seen him do 3 or 4 extra attacks, and it's a lot of damage. In PvP, it's a little trickier to use it, right? But you can, because he's getting those extra attacks to pretty much finish off a unit if his initial attack didn't work. But he does need to go against elements that he has an advantage against, because you want those crits to hit, right? And if you see the gear that people are putting on him, it's either attack, crit rate, they have the life steal counter set, but I put the crit set on him because I'm typically using him in PvE, right? The extra attack and crit rate does really work because that also helps his scaling as well, but I just put like a bunch of crit damage on him, right? That's just the advantage I have with the gear I've farmed and got lucky. But he is a very solid unit for you in doing content. If you can see, his performance is amazing for Fafnir because he can get those extra attacks. And people use him in several different content. But Fafnir is where he really reigns supreme. And he's a cheap unit. You can get him pretty much max resonated because you're going to summon him a bunch, especially if you do summons, and especially if you did your summons for like the Ollie event or just, you know, for whoever. So you're gonna have multiple copies of Tang Yoon, and some people are probably thinking like, what am I gonna do with these Tang Yoons? Yo, resonate him and use him. He is really solid. He's really good. He also has his own captain ability to raise ally attack if you don't have like Li Ling or something like that, because this will help you for PvE. He's solid. Like he's really solid. He can pull off it was surprising, right? And I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking Lin Zhao is going to be one of your best fighters. I like her, but typically, like, with her, like, I don't have to use her in like every content. Like, she's really good. She does a lot of damage too. Mine just doesn't do a lot of damage, and I have her skills like almost maxed out. Like, I'm literally waiting on one, and the defense down, speed down, and all that. It's just that, like, you know, I build her with a bunch of crit damage, and that's how it's supposed to be. But then I also need a bunch of attack, and I also need accuracy. But then you also want speed. So like, she just needs better stats, and then also you need HP on her because like she's very squishy. So I just have to find the perfect build for her, because she can, yes, do a lot of damage. She can, yes, give some nice debuffs. But I don't personally have amazing gear. So I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking like, where's Lin Zhao? Where's Lin Zhao? I don't have an amazing Lin Zhao. I'm going off of my 3 favorite Espers based off of what I have and the gear that I have for them, right? And how it works. Because like, while I do, yes, have a 300% crit damage set that I could put on her, it doesn't have high attack, and she needs high attack because if you look, she has ridiculous scalings on some of her stuff, right? So if you have a unit that has really good scaling on their attacks, crit damage and all that is really only going to be beneficial when you have high attack, because it's being multiplied by 200 or whatever % of the attack. So that is going to be the stat that you really want to focus on. You want to get them to 3,000 plus attack, and then you know, if you can get them to 250% crit damage, and that's really nice. But then also for Lin Zhao, you have to get that accuracy, because you want those debuffs to amplify the amount of damage that she can do. So it's just a lot of stats that I just, you know. And the same thing with Hyde. Like, Hyde requires a lot, but Hyde can have still okay stats and still do good for you in a lot of average content. Lin Zhao, she was just a little squishy for me, and it was just kind of difficult to use her at the beginning. I kind of just moved on to her just because of, like, you know, Twitch chat was just like, yo, bro, like, Lin Zhao, man, Lin Zhao. So I was like, all right, guys, all right, I'll 6-star. So, but that's pretty much, guys, all I have for the fighters. They're pretty straightforward. They do damage. They can help finish content for you. That's pretty much about it. But I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You lucky gamers, have a good one. Lucky Lux like buff that I can whenever I ult with him. So, you know, I'd probably say speed HP is really good if you can get that accuracy up as high as 80%. If you